part of making people feel comfortable. And how do you create an inclusive environment where people can just be themselves, which is what we really ultimately want.
Well, welcome to Exude Human Capital Consulting's Hold On, Let Me Close My Door, the podcast that brings real stories from real professionals with real solutions to you. Join us as we navigate the ever-changing workplace with Allison DeFlorio, co-founder and managing partner of Exude Human Capital, and special guest.
Welcome to today's episode of Hold On, Let Me Close My Door. Today we have a special edition of our podcast as we celebrate Pride Month. I am Romaine Jones-Wise, and joining me today is Doug May.
Hi, Romaine. It's good to see you today.
It's good to see you too, Doug. How have you been?
I've been great. I mean, I'm excited about this podcast and talking about some things that are really important to me and important to a lot of people in the U.S. So I'm ready to get going.
Ready to get going. I'm glad to have you here to be part of this conversation with you. So how about we dive right in? First question that a lot of people are asking right now is, what steps do you believe organizations can take to create a more inclusive environment for LGBTQIA plus employees?
Well, from my perspective, so I've been, just to kind of give you a little bit about me, I've been in the workforce since the 80s. And so I started out in the banking industry, and then I worked in several different industries like casinos, and I've done a lot of consulting. And so I've seen a big change in how people are accepted in the workplace. In the 80s, it was sort of like I guess it was the best way to look at it. It was a known secret. Do you know what I mean by that? Where it was sort of like the people knew you were gay, but nobody ever really talked about it. And then it started to change in the 90s and into the 2000s when diversity training came about. So I think some of the things that I found in my life as going through, as working as a gay man in corporate America, all over the country, actually, I worked in several different states, is that you don't put the pressure on the folks who are the group that you're talking to. So, for instance, if a person, identifies as gay or trans or bisexual, they don't know everything about being that. I mean, so it's treating people as individuals, asking them questions, and not having judgment, I think, is the first step. I know that you have some thoughts on that as well, Ro. What do you think?
I think that it's very important for organizations to get to know the individuals. And I like your point, not putting that pressure on one individual who identifies with that group and asking them for all the questions, because that's a lot of pressure and that's not fair. And they don't know the answers or responses everybody else may feel. But the thing that I think is true, regardless of identification, is treating people as individuals. Get to know individuals. Meet people where they are. Don't expect that everybody's going to be a cookie cutter of what you envision this identity group to be, but take the time to get to know them, find out what their strengths are, their communication styles, how they like to engage, and it creates a more inclusive environment, but it also activates equity because you're giving them the support that they need, not the equality support across the board, which I think is huge. Another thing that I think is very important in creating an inclusive environment is making sure that everybody feels safe. So
Absolutely.
There are procedures and policies in place to handle when things kind of go to the left, when people may say some things that are not appropriate, and how we navigate those conversations so that individuals feel that they can report those things and know that there will be some kind of recourse or training or learning experience that comes from it. I think is very important. I think having space for grace. I think I've heard that several times in some of our conversations together.
Yeah. Always.
What exactly does that mean from your vantage point?
Well, I look at it this way, because people are going to make mistakes, and you and I have done training together before. We've worked with different organizations before, And what happens, especially when you get into DEIB and working with different groups of people, you're always afraid to make a mistake. So if we look at for instance, the trans community right now, is that, it's actually really in the spotlight, and unfortunately not always for good reasons. And there's issues over the use of pronouns. And so some people are just so afraid that if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to hurt this person's feelings, or they're going to make me look, like I'm a terrible person. They're going to come back at me. So I think we all need to practice that a little bit. And so if I call you by, so it depends on intent though. So let's talk a little bit about intent. So if I misname you, if I don't use they or them, or I use her instead of him, and I do it as a mistake, then there's this space for grace with that period, with that. But if somebody, you can tell the difference. If somebody's doing it just to be mean, I was trying to find a clean word to say. And so then that's a different story. And you can tell that. I mean, you can really tell that in the workplace. It's interesting because seeing the difference in the workplace now, although we have taken a couple of steps back, from my perspective, is that people used to say things like, "Oh, I would never know you're gay," which is hard to believe, but anyway. So, as like it was a compliment, and it's like, well, it's not really a compliment. So you have to educate them about that. Or people saying, "Who's the husband in your relationship?" It's like, come on, man. So do I ask you? So it's just really interesting that sometimes you have to pick. I think as a gay person or a person LGBTQIA plus person, you kind of have to pick your battles sometimes. If it was harmless, it's different. But if it continues, then you have to continue that conversation. So, and have a safe place to do that. And yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry. I kind of took over there. So
it's okay. I appreciate the conversation. I was just going to say, to that point of, if there is a misstep and someone uses the wrong pronouns, let's first assume good intent. Like you said.
Right. Yeah.
Assume good intent all the way around. Like, this is not anybody being malicious. If there's continuing misuse of pronouns, then definitely continue the conversation. But at some point, it's really the person requesting what makes them feel comfortable in the workplace.
Sure.
And if I want to be called Ro, and I say my pronouns are she, her, they, guess what? That's okay. And guess what? My colleagues and my supervisors would need to take the time and make the intention to support my desire in the workplace. Client Ro, she, her, they, and go from there. I think we've lost the empathy and the compassion to really want to connect with people and meet them where they are. Yes, it's something new for some of us. New pronouns. It sometimes it messes up people's grammar. They feel like they're not speaking right to use they in singular. So it makes people feel awkward. But if that is that person's preferred pronouns and they're asking you to identify them as that, the least we can do is respect the request.
Right. And yeah, it's not hard. And it's not, and you're not making, everything becomes so political, and they use the words woke and all of that kind of, it's not that, it's just respecting what somebody wants to be, how they want to be referred to.
Exactly.
And why is that so hard to do sometimes, I wonder. And I just, it kind of, I was going to say flabbergast. That's a word from like a baby boomer would say, right? So it's like,
the mission holds true.
It just does. It's like, why are you so upset about this? He wants to be referred to as they. Or they want to be referred to as they. Why is that so hard? I mean, and so I just, it's interesting. It's an interesting take. So, like, for instance, What we put when we do our training, when we do our trainings, we put on our screen with our picture, we put our preferred pronouns.
Yes.
And that's really, and I've never had anybody object to that, but I've had people who other trainers who told me that people have objected to seeing that on the screen. And I don't understand why. I really try to. I mean, it's words. So
it's exactly what it is. But it also creates a space for other people to share their pronouns. So with trainers, we're kind of setting that safe space to say, here are my pronouns. Please share yours.
Sure.
The thing is, a lot of times people don't know how to start the conversation.
Right.
So, I put it in my introduction. Hi, my name is Romaine Jones-Wise. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Whenever I introduce myself, because I always want people to know that I will see you for who you are, just right. How you want to be referred to.
Right. And you don't put it, it's not like when you ask them to introduce themselves, they can identify their pronouns if they want to.
Right.
It's all about your personal preference. Exactly. And so it's just been an interesting world. So I think that's a big part of making people feel comfortable. And how do you create an inclusive environment where people can just be themselves, which is what we really ultimately want to do. So.
And if you don't know and the person doesn't offer their pronouns, call them by their name. It's just that simple.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And so it's just interesting. So I think one of the other things that if we look at the workplace, I think there's a lot of letters in LGBTQIA+.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if honestly, Ro, I'll tell you, before we had this meeting, I had to look up what some of the letters meant myself. And, I've been around for a while. And so it's interesting. And I think that's something else that people may struggle with in the workplace is like understanding where the person is on the spectrum when it comes to gender or it comes to their sexual orientation. So should we take a look at those? Do you think that would be a good thing to talk about?
Just to kind of identify what does mean.
Okay. So shall we walk through it? So the L obviously is for lesbian, which is for people who identify as lesbian. Gay is typically is about gay men. So bisexual is where they're attracted to all genders. Transgender is a person who they have a different gender identity from what they were assigned at birth with. So and there could be different transgender is a different type of community. Some people have had the surgery, some people have not, and will probably never have it, but they just identify it as a different gender. So and then they were assigned at birth. Then Q is queer, and it's questioning. It's typically, so we talk about in training, right? We talk about cisgender. Mm-hmm. And so typically a person who falls into the queer letter would be somebody who doesn't identify as being the cisgender, I don't want to say norms because but cisgender we normally talk about, or male or female. Intersex could be a person which is the I. They're born with variations on sex characteristics. They may have different organs than other people. It may be different sex organs than other people. Asexual is people who really don't typically are not very sexual, and so they don't have a lot of attraction. And that they have romantic attraction, but maybe not sexual attraction. And then the plus it's a whole bunch of the different gender identities and sexual orientations. For instance, like the Two-Spirit, which is from the Native American culture. So that's kind of a quick overview. I don't know. Do you have anything to add? Did I miss anything, or did I explain it all right?
I think it would be helpful for individuals because we use the word cisgender all the time. And
right.
Sometimes people know what that means and they don't know what that means. So
right.
Cisgender, just to clarify, is the assigned, how would we say that? The assigned
gender, yeah, at birth, right?
On biology.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Based on biology. So, but then if you look at intersex, they sometimes don't know really how to assign that.
Okay.
And so um, there was a great example. If you ever watch, I talked to you about this yesterday. What the series called "We're Here," and it's a drag queens go into small towns all over the country, and they try to educate about the differences of LGBTQIA people, and they had a person who was an intersex, and so and the family talked about, so like when they saw the baby, first saw the baby, the the sexual organs were different.
Okay.
So it really didn't fall into male or female. So that's kind of that happens as well. And it's just something that happens with nature. So, so it's very, so it was very interesting. I learned a lot from it, I guess is what I'm telling you, because I'm like, wow, I never really knew that. I mean, I knew that in some, but I really learned a lot from the person that was on that show. So it was interesting.
It's one of those things where it's important for us to know the definitions and to understand what the letters mean, because there's such a broad group of individuals who identify with this category, but none of them are all the same.
Right.
That's okay.
Mm-hmm.
We can't, compartmentalize.
Sure.
The entire LGBTQIA plus community is this one thing.
Right.
You can't make generalizations and stereotypes. And I think that's part of the challenge of creating inclusive environments, is that we're bringing the generalizations and we're bringing the stereotypes that have been present into the workplace. And, I think this is a good segue to some of the misconceptions of stereotypes and generalizations for LGBTQIA plus professionals in the workplace. How would you suggest individuals address them or challenge them in the workplace?
It's interesting because I would have to say I'm pretty lucky in my career that I worked at organizations that were very open. I mean, later in my career, I mean, it was different back in the 80s, because there were, this is when it's when the AIDS crisis was really at its hottest. And so there was a lot of stuff that was going on that was not cool in the workplace. And so because there was a conception, and that's a misconception. That's a really old misconception, but I'll just put it out there so everybody kind of knows, is that there was an assumption often when you identified as gay in the 80s that they thought you had AIDS. I mean, it was just, and so it was a very difficult thing to handle. And I lost a lot of friends back then, honestly. And I'm very lucky. I never, I didn't contract it, but so that's where we started. I think the misconceptions now are that we can be overly sensitive, that you can't say anything about, that everybody's going to get offended. I think that's really where we're at with a lot of folks now, that they think that we're everything's about who we are, and it's really not. It's only when the line is crossed, then it becomes about who we are. But and there's a lot of assumptions about that, that associating gay men with pedophiles and all this crazy stuff that's out there. And it's like, and so it's really understanding that we're all individuals. We can have people, I grew up in the Midwest, so I have a different experience as somebody who grew up in the South or the East Coast. I'm a white man. And so, I mean, that's different. If you're a Black gay person, it could be completely different. There's a whole different experience that we have. And it's really just, you talked about it at the very beginning, where it was about how you get to know people, because there's a lot of things that make us who we are. Being a person, so being a person who's LGBTQIA plus is just one piece of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So did I answer the question?
it's really about, challenging the stereotypes, is stepping away from them.
Right.
Assuming that everybody, I think we had in our conversation yesterday, I think we talked about not every gay man is feminine, not every lesbian is masculine. Like,
Yeah.
there's no cookie cutter answer.
Right.
It's not that LGBTQIA employees are looking to be difficult in the workplace. That's not the intent. They just want to be valued and seen and respected.
Right.
Like any other class of individuals. It just needs to show up. So I think it's very important that organizations invest in training. I think it's very important that organizations equip their leaders to navigate and manage conflict objectively. I think we've rephrased conflict at the firm, and we identify it as constructive conversations, meaning with the intent to solve. When we can address and challenge stereotypes, we are calling them forward, and we are dispelling the myth and perceptions. That's the way to overcome them. That's the way to get away from the assumptions that everybody in the LGBTQIA community is this, because it's
right. And this is the other thing as well, is that Ro is not only about it's not only about how we treat them as coworkers, it's also how our customers or clients or our guests treat as well. So it's important to know that if somebody comes in, like let's say you work in a hotel or something, and a customer comes in and they start to, I don't know, say something horrible to you, or they don't want you to wait on them or whatever. It's up to the company or the organization to make sure that they create safety for that person. And sometimes and so what I've found in my career is, as I've been in HR for a long time, is that sometimes we had to have difficult conversations with our customers as well. And not about LGBTQIA plus, but also, racial things directed at women. I mean, all the spectrum. And that's, and so we really had to sometimes have those difficult conversations, and it's still happening. So that's something else to look at as well, that the people feel that you've got their back. That I'm not going, we're not going to put up with this in the workplace if this happens. So that's another way to look at it. And I think that can be more of a challenge than the internal stuff. So
most definitely, because a lot of organizations don't want to upset their customers.
Right.
But think about the harm you're doing to your employee by not having that conversation with the customer to create a safe space for that employee. That behavior like that will not be tolerated.
I can give you an example that's outside of LGBTQIA, and it happened yesterday.
Oh, okay.
So my partner is African American, and we live in Michigan, and if you get outside the cities, it can be pretty rough. And he works at a bank, and a customer came in and he said hello and asked if he could help her. And she said, "I don't want that black man to wait on me."
Wow.
Right?
2024.
Yeah, in 2024. Yeah. And so of course I immediately had my HR hat on. And so first of all, when she first came in, because he's being trained, because he just started there. Yeah. The person who said that, "Oh, she's really mean," and I'm like, they let her get away with it. is what I'm saying. So it's just, when people say it doesn't happen anymore, it happened yesterday. So, and it was, and it's interesting because it's and that just was based on his skin color. They didn't know that he was gay or any of that stuff. And so it was just, it was shocking to me, So so that's what I want to say to everybody. If you don't think it's happening now, it is happening.
Still,
So yeah, and it could be for a number of reasons. So
it's
sorry, I didn't mean to take us down south.
but the thing is, and the response of saying that just because the woman is mean, that's just how she is. That's no longer a pass.
Right.
Like, it's not a pass to be able to say whatever you want because that's just the way you are. No, we all have some self-reflection and
Right.
self-management that we need to engage with one another, and that's important. Just saying that that's just the way I am, it's no longer an option. So it's June, right?
Right.
Officially Pride Month. So how should workplaces celebrate Pride Month?
I've worked for some really cool organizations, including the firm that we're working for now, where they really take a vested interest in making everybody feel welcome. And some of the things, so my best experiences were with MGM Resorts when I worked with them in Las Vegas. So we would have a float in the Pride Parade. We'd have, we put out facts about the LGBT community. They had a resource group. Mm-hmm. There was, and that would plan the parade. I mean, so how cool is that? They had a lot of us involved in their diversity training. So we had diversity champions, they were called. So everybody in the organization went through that. I was in the very first diversity champion class, which is cool. And they'd support organizations like the Gay and Lesbian Center, the Human Rights Campaign, all of the different, and give donations and buy tables at events and really were visible. But they were a huge company. So if you look at a huge organization, they can do things like that. So maybe if you're a smaller organization, you can still go to Pride. You can still put out stories and about LGBTQIA plus people. You can still have resource groups. Maybe you can't do the big dinners and that kind of stuff, but you can still do those kind of things.
Sure. And I think organizations need to look past June too.
Yeah.
Don't just be performative in June and
right.
Your LGBTQIA employees on the website in June. Think about representation year round. Think about integrating the LGBTQIA into the entire culture of the organization. Think about how we celebrate each other year round. Think about inclusive policies. How are you defining relationships in the organization? Really take the time to look at how we're doing business. Then we don't just have to focus on this in June. It becomes the nature of how we do business. So I think it's very important for managers and leaders, especially in smaller organizations, like you said, that don't have a lot of financial means to do larger events. Share the information that comes out. Let the team know that, June is Pride Month. Some people may not even be aware of that, but putting out the storytelling, the sharing of information, just making people aware is a great way to really engage and celebrate Pride Month.
Right. Yeah, and I like the really looking at your policies. I think, and it's not just for the L and the G. It's, you need to look at our trans brothers and sisters too. And that, that how do we have even medical insurance that would help, to look at that specific policy, because there is care that's associated with a trans person who's going through transition. And so, the surgeries and as well as the hormones and all the things that go along with that.
Making sure doctors to go to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you really have to look at it because it's, how do we make it so that person feels safe, that they have our medical insurance and that they can go to a doctor that's going to take care of them. Right. So it's really an interesting. It's really just looking at things in a new way.
Yes. And I think recently, and I just did this with a client, looking at policies that give time off. So parental leave. Not calling it paternity leave anymore. Let's call it parental.
Right.
The bonding time. The one that struck me as very odd is how organizations offer bereavement time.
Right. Yeah.
Think immediate family, but we don't consider that
Right.
family dynamics may be different or non-traditional when we offer employees time off for the loss of a loved one. A loved one does not necessarily have to be family.
Right.
Have to be connected. There are certain friends of mine that if I lost them, it would be detrimental to me, and I would need some time off. So,
no, I get you. Yeah,
evaluating, bereavement policies and medical plans and leave, even the language in which the handbook is written is very making sure we're using gender neutral terminologies in the handbook. Things like that matter for individuals who want to be seen, valued, and respected.
Yeah, and I mean the whole spectrum. I mean, even if you look at, so when you do the EEO stuff for applications, it's typically male or female. I mean, and so it's really, I've noticed a lot of them have gotten better. Or are you married or single, or now they'll say in a domestic partnership, or have a partner instead of so we have come a long way. And we have a ways to go again. And so it's really about, we're kind of where we started, right? If you think about where we started, we say, treat people like individuals. There's no magic formula in how you need to treat an LGBTQIA plus person. I told you about this yesterday, and I just want to it was a person, when I worked in the casino industry, there was a person who really meant well. And she asked me about how do you and your partner want to be treated when you check into a hotel room? And I have to tell you, Ro, I was a little perplexed. I'm like, I'm good. You can see I wish you could see my face right now because I'm perplexed. I go, and she meant well. It was not coming from a place of, because they wanted to provide training to their front desk folks so they would make folks who are gay feel comfortable. And I just remember I said, I really have to think about this. I said, we kind of just want to be treated like everybody else. We want you to be nice to us. And so, of course, so I'm trying to, because, I want to give her an answer. I said, I don't know, maybe if we're sharing a full, king size bed, don't make a face. I don't know. I couldn't think of anything.
I'm going to ask that question of what had been happening that made people. I don't know. Like what, when you check into hotels, you expect this great customer service experience.
Right.
That's the nature of hospitality. Right. Me too. The desire is to make the customer feel seen, respected, and make them want to come. So I would love to know what they were doing to their LGBTQIA plus customers that required them to ask you that question.
Well, and I don't think anything. I think they were just treating everybody nicely, and she just wanted to. Because when we first started diversity, I've been working in the diversity space since the beginning of 2000, so it's been a while, 24 years. And we were really, when we first started the diversity journey, a lot of it was putting people in boxes, let's be frank about it. And so, and then I think they just wanted to know, so she may have asked, well, how do you as a Black person want to be treated when you check into a hotel? You know what I mean? So it was coming from a good place, but I think you sometimes lose the message when it's like, I just want you to be nice to me.
If you would expect, there's the short answer.
Yeah. And I said, no special treatment. I don't need a parade or something that's checked into the hotel or, I mean, so it's just interesting though, but she meant well. And so,
Yep.
yeah. And so I didn't want her to feel bad about asking the question. And so I think that's where we need to be.
I agree. What other things have people been asking that we want to cover? Is there anything else?
Let's see. He talks about, no, I think we covered all of the questions that we were asked. So,
I have one because I get this question a lot. People want to know between sex and gender.
Oh, well, what is the difference? So if you think about this, sex is what we're assigned at birth.
Okay.
Right. So if you're born and you have male genitalia, you're identified as male. Same thing with female. Is typically what happens. Gender is more fluid, I guess, is the best way to think about that. It's where how you express yourself or the gender you feel that you are. So it could be male or it could be female. It's how you identify. So it's also, there's a lot of, so it's how you identify as an individual, but there's also a lot of characteristics that are put around gender. So if you think about it, there's things like, what are the roles of each gender? So, and how does that play out? What are the behaviors you typically see from, and I'm not going to get into stereotypes. So are typically considered male, a male characteristic or a female characteristic. And how, so, and it's the things that we talked about earlier about where, they say, well, gay men are more feminine and lesbians are more masculine. So it's really about reversing those. It's looking at those type of characteristics, I guess.
As we evolve as people, I think the thing that we need to realize is everything is fluid. everything is changing.
Yeah.
So there are no check boxes anymore.
Right. Well, yeah.
So gender has, as I view it, gender has become this wave.
Spectrum. Yeah. Wave or spectrum. Yeah.
Definitely, how people identify, how they express themselves, the behaviors and the attributes. But I think the thing that we have to get past is those typical gender characteristics. I don't think they hold water anymore.
No, they don't. And it's interesting because they're I don't know if it's because it's easier for people, or I think it's just really about wanting to go back to where we have to look at it as a strict male and female identity, when there's a whole bunch of different people on the spectrum when you look at that. But it's easy to just say, well, that person's a man and that person's a woman. But they're not, maybe.
It's just easier to say, I'm Ro and you're Doug.
Yeah. And depending on what I'm talking about, I could be really high. We were talking about Broadway yesterday, and I was just like, or if I'm a big tennis fan. So if I'm a tennis fan as well, I would talk differently about tennis.
But
right? Or
we're both Broadway aficionados. You as a Caucasian gay man and me as a heterosexual Black woman. But we will go all the way in if you talk good Broadway.
I know.
Chorus line and everything. Let's go.
I know. And so it's it's a really good point. It's where people connect. It's where you find the connection. So like, I mean, real like my tennis friends, you'd probably, God, this is the most boring conversation in the world. Did you see the way over, you know? And so but it's interesting because it's about, it's getting to know that person, you know? Yeah. It's about connecting and asking questions. Being curious and being genuinely curious.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's the answer. So
listen, we could talk all day. I think
yeah, we could talk about this all day, and they go, these two are just, you know, they went into the Broadway thing.
right. Once we go Broadway, it's over. So I think we have to, you know, open the door again. I think we need to let the people go. This has been great conversation.
Yeah, I loved it. It's awesome.
Always a pleasure talking with you and learning from you. I appreciate the time and the interaction. So I guess we can say until next time.